Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Above Average Podcast. I'm Dan, and we're on to episode 3 now, I believe. Now, I'm going to have to preface this by apologising. I've been a terrible host. Last week I wasn't around, I was incredibly busy. I had an enormous amount to do. But uni tends to bog you down. It's pretty crappy. There's an enormous amount to get on with sometimes, and so I had an assignment that I had to crack out of the way, and I was going to see my friend for his birthday over the weekend, so I was out on the lash. Henceforth, I was unable to record last week, so I have to be a terrible human being and preface this with quite the apology. Hopefully I should make up for it a little bit more this week though, because I am going to make sure I get it all done and edited and out into the world, because I've had a few people come up to me and sort of say, "Oh, Dan, wait a minute. Where is it? What are you doing?" And despite the fact that this was incredibly surprising to me, because for the most part this is incredibly half-arsed, apparently some people actually do like to sit and listen to this in their spare time, and henceforth I kind of felt pretty guilty. So here I am, back once again for you guys to listen to, and for your auditory pleasure, another episode of an Above Average podcast. So, now I've got the pretty pathetic apology out of the way, I would like to also preface this by saying that originally my plan was to do the third episode of the podcast on some sort of political front. Now, politics is something that I am very opinionated on. I talk about it quite a lot. Anyone that actually knows me personally knows I don't tend to shut the hell up about it, and I get very aggravated very quickly over silly little things, tiny, irritating little niggles that tend to crop up within the political world. Even the slightest mistake, and I'm pretty much on it. I go straight for the neck when it comes to this sort of thing. As I've mentioned previously, I have actually spoke against MPs and things before, back at sixth form, when we had a few come in and we were talking specifically about salaries and things, and going into putting up prices of university in the UK. Now, I do still intend to do a full episode on politics, but it won't be this one. The reason I say that is because I'm actually currently working on getting a few friends together, and I can't remember whether I actually mentioned this before, but I have a few friends of mine who aren't currently able to do so, that fully intend to come on and have a little bit of a chat, have a little bit of a debate with me, and generally do a big special on politics and the whole situation going on at the moment. So until then, that is going to be delayed just for a little while. So I figured just for this week, what I'm going to do is just go over a few of the little news segments after the last couple of weeks of me not being present, because, well, I'm a slacker, and just try and give my opinion on a few little things here and there. So here is my little discussion of the week's news. I am going to start with something a little bit political, specifically talking about Brexit. Yes, everyone's hearing about Brexit. Again, I do tend to bring it up quite a lot, but it's just consistently going on. Now, for those of you that have actually been keeping up with it, it's all gone a bit tits up, really. I think I'll give a brief opinion, seeing as I'm not actually dedicating this episode to politics alone. However, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. Now, the problem I'm having with Brexit at the moment is that we've worked ourselves into quite the corner here. Now, we have voted to leave. Whether you agree or disagree with that is totally up to you. However, the fact is, that was the democratic vote, and we have to sort of face it and stand up to it and just stick with it. Now, a lot of people want a second referendum, and the issue with that is you have a second referendum and democracy in the country becomes dead. You kill off democracy in a country and it just doesn't function like a proper Western world government should. And we all know how that ends. Just look at, well, how the Second World War started. The other issue, though, is that having to push through Brexit with Theresa May, as I already gave my opinion on Theresa May in the very first episode, is still easier said than done. Now, actually, as I'm recording this, approximately half an hour before I sat down to record this, not even that, sorry, 20 minutes, Theresa May has in fact visited Brussels to talk with them over the conditions of Brexit and her Brexit deal, which apparently many people seem incredibly unhappy with, because we've had a lot of MP walkouts, etc., etc. And surprisingly, after 11 hours of, well, what seems like completely bugger all, there has been absolutely no breakthrough whatsoever. And again, I'm reporting this 20 minutes after it happened. Which just means that there's no deal Brexit that's looming is, however, slightly worrying. I think the problem is going to be actually finding a deal that works for everybody. Now, the DUP, the Irish people that are pretty much in control at the moment, who have Theresa May completely under their thumb, are threatening of going on strike. Both members of the General Parliament and even people within the Conservative Party are threatening to oust Theresa May, and quite frankly, I believe that a general election is very much on the way, because this situation is terrifically bad. Now, that's a bit of a contradiction. It's just crap, really. It is. It's awful. This supposed summit that's going on is achieving absolutely nothing. We're not getting anywhere with the deal. Nobody likes it. And the whole point of Brexit was that we were to be independent from the EU, right? If what is supposedly being proposed in this deal goes through, we're still going to be paying them an enormous amount of money. We still have to follow their rules. So, does that really define Brexit? I don't know. It's a difficult one to say. However, what I can say is that regardless of how this goes, it's just not looking good. It really isn't. There's now a huge row over Gibraltar and Spain. I mean, it has been going on and off for years, but it's just been exacerbated by this whole thing. Angela Merkel has said that she doesn't want to get involved, so that's Germany out of trying to just find some sort of actual deal. And of course, she's quite big in the whole EU situation with regards to Brussels and Brexit, it's sort of like trying to hit an unstoppable force against an immovable object. It's basically achieving nothing, or just like trying to talk to a brick wall, like talking to some politicians, for example. So that's pretty much my opinion on the whole Brexit deal at the moment, is that we are essentially currently having no deal at all, and regardless of which way this is actually going to go, it's not looking too good. I think we're really going to need to pull one out of the hat here and settle down, just to try and figure out exactly what our next move is going to be, because either way, I kind of feel like this country is like the fish in a barrel, and whoever is looming above us is carrying a shotgun. It's actually quite nerve-wracking. That being said, as a country, we're fairly strong, assuming, again, the Second World War is anything to look at, and although people have changed a lot since then, I think it's fair to say that I don't think that we will go down easily, and at least I would hope that we wouldn't. My personal opinion on the actual negotiation situation is that I think Theresa May has to go. I think we should employ somebody who is a bit more aggressive in their approach, or perhaps somebody who instead is going to enforce everything that we have defined under the idea of Brexit, rather than just bending to the whim of other groups such as the EU. Now, actually, whether or not you voted for Brexit is kind of out of the question here. Whether you support the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, whether you're very liberal, you're sort of caught somewhere in the middle, or whether you just don't have a clue, it's kind of important that we don't actually forget what's going on here, because it's going to have a huge impact on our lives, especially, I know all the people that listen to this, or at least most of the people that listen to this anyway, and they seem to be about my age, and it's going to have a humongous impact on our future, certainly. So, it's my opinion that actually paying attention to this, and if we do get the chance to, I don't know, undergo another general election or undergo our say, or there is some form of referendum even, which I think would actually be a bad idea, unless done under very specific and strict circumstances, we need to pay attention to this. It's very important. Otherwise, we could essentially be buggering ourselves. And I don't think many people like that. So I suggest keep looking, try and read up on some politics, unless it actually bores you to tears, in which case, of course, probably not a good idea. And just try and stick with it. We need to make a difference. It's very important to everybody that we can knuckle down and that we can hopefully do something that's actually beneficial to our country, because at the moment, it really isn't looking good. Well, now I've got that out of my system, I think it's probably time to move on before it all gets a little bit too depressing, because let's be honest, politics can get pretty damn depressing. So, right, what have we got next? Okay, so what is today? As I'm recording this, coming up to this Friday is Black Friday. Now, pretty much everybody nowadays has heard of Black Friday. It's infamous because the numerous clips of shoppers running into stores like a bunch of, I don't know, angry wildebeest herds of the bastards, all trying to catch a good deal, everything getting broken, people getting hurt, the police getting called, you name it, it's happened. It's infamous for causing riots and issues and pipe bombs and anything surprisingly severe, given the fact that a lot of the time you're just getting fleeced by companies that try and trick you into thinking there's a good deal when they've hiked the price up a week before. That's that's something very much to pay attention to. Everyone loves a bit of online shopping, myself included, but very much if you're going to try and sneak up on any of those deals over Black Friday, just remember that a lot of the companies, they do tend to hike the prices up actually right before Black Friday strikes. So you think you're getting a bit of a deal, realistically you're absolutely not. It's kind of tragic. Again, spend your money wisely. Don't be tricked into spending that which you don't have. It's just going to generate so many memes. I just know it is. And as much as I love memes, probably more so than the average individual, I don't know whether people doing a lot of stupid things is really worth even the memes. So, very much when talking about Black Friday, I think my recommendation to everyone, just spend sensibly. Don't be an idiot. But if you're going to be an idiot, just be prepared to get memed, because you know it's going to happen, and at the end of the day, the people that are going to benefit, the sort of socially inept individuals like myself who tend to sit behind a computer and just laugh at memes all day when they're not doing their work, or even perhaps when they should be doing their work. Just something to put out there. Now, it actually has quite an impact on uni students, Black Friday, because, of course, everyone at uni is poor, essentially. There's always the odd one or two that come from better off backgrounds, but when you're trying to live it out alone for the first time, arguably for the first time for most people, trying to actually balance spending your money is difficult at the best of times when, again, you've got the sesh looming, the odd night out or 2, or 7, but it's all about being frugal at uni, and it's very difficult to be frugal when these companies really capitalise on it, and within every 5 minutes you go on campus and there's so many posters up, oh, deals for this, deals for that, discounts here and there and everywhere. Again, please, only buy what you need. There's nothing wrong with treating yourself, but there's treating yourself and there's bankrupting yourself and having to get several credit cards. I do, in fact, know people that have burnt through numerous student loans and overdrafts, etc., and I personally wouldn't recommend it. As long as you can make it work, it's fine, but I would not under any circumstances recommend it, because debt is not good for anyone except from the banks that are profiting off of it, and unless you're really that interested in buying into the economy, essentially, probably gonna have a bad time. Now, that being said, on the flip side, it is actually a great thing, I think, Black Friday as well. You can argue that it is considerably better than I've just made it out to be. The reason behind that is, if you've got any Christmas shopping to do, oh, please, it's the perfect time. It's absolutely brilliant. So, if you have loads piling up, or you want to get it done early, try and save a little bit of dough, you know what I mean? Try and just get in a few sneaky presents. It's always good just to try and bring in that early investment. So, when it comes close to Christmas, you're not going to do probably what I normally end up doing, presents and panicking, crapping myself, and running around last minute, kind of like the Roadrunner on crack, and trying to obtain that which is difficult to obtain when there are just as many people as all of the Black Friday memes depict, running around like headless chickens, all bashing each other and fumbling around like a bunch of great apes, all trying to buy the same sort of things. So, in summary, if you can afford it, if you have Christmas shopping to do, and if you're prepared to make the effort, 100% Black Friday is totally for you, and I would considerably recommend it. However, if you don't have much money, you're relying on credit cards, you're trying to be frugal, you don't need anything, or specifically if you work actually over Black Friday, is probably something else I should mention. Again, I know people that are very much going to suffer on the day, then it's probably not going to be for you. I would absolutely hate to work on Black Friday. for anyone that actually knows me personally, I'm in between jobs at the moment. As a student at uni, it's sometimes difficult actually to hold a job, and I could be moving house over the next couple of months. So currently I'm just focused on very well budgeting myself and trying to sort out the system whereby I have a nice smooth transition by not digging into my savings and using the student I've got just to keep me going until I've moved house. However, for those of you that have to work on Black Friday, I really don't envy you at all. I really don't, and I expect I'll probably have to do the same next year. And as a third year uni student next year, that is going to be delightful, really is. So we'll just have to see about that, but best of luck to anyone that is actually having to work over Black Friday, and likewise over Christmas as it's coming up. I'll save that wish probably for a little bit later on, but just the best of luck to everybody really in surviving it, because I know certainly where I'm from it can be an absolute hectic nightmare. Now, the next bit of news actually I think we've got today is something hopefully a little bit more inspiring. Now, I don't know about anyone outside the UK, but certainly for those that are within it, you will probably have heard about this Iceland advert, the banned Iceland advert that came out over the last couple of weeks that unfortunately hasn't made it to TV. Now, Iceland's Christmas advert this year, for anyone that doesn't know, was originally pitched to, I believe it's Clearcast, which is the company that vets adverts to actually put them on television. Now, for some reason, the company banned this advert because of some Communications Act or other, which basically said that it was a politically geared advert and therefore they're not allowed to put it on TV. The response is, as you can imagine, it's obvious, really. It was put all over the internet everywhere. Now, the advert itself is about the regulation of the palm oil trade and how it affects orangutans, which doesn't seem like the typical topic for a Christmas advert, but if you do see the advert, it's very quite poignant. But henceforth, it's gained an enormous amount of momentum. There has been a petition online. It's, as I currently record this, got close to 800,000 people supporting the reinstatement of the advert onto television. Clearcast have received an enormous number of very strongly worded letters that I'm probably not going to read out or repeat. All basically saying, well, why haven't you put this up? It's not that politically geared. It's just explaining to people that if you use products with excess palm oil, you're basically killing the planet slowly but surely. You're killing orangutans, you're deforesting. I don't know, deforesting. You're essentially lending to deforestation. You're helping companies commit deforestation on a large scale. And henceforth, obviously it's not back on television because these sort of companies, the bodies that vet these things, they're incredibly stubborn. They're more stubborn than I am, and that's really quite saying something. Henceforth, it's all over the internet. It's probably gained more exposure actually being spread across the internet, spread like an absolute wildfire, than if it were to actually be regulated and to be just kept on television. Again, as I'm recording this, just on Facebook alone, more than 12 million people have watched it just on Facebook. That doesn't include YouTube or any other social media sharing site. That is just Facebook alone. Now, 12 million doesn't sound like a lot, and obviously if it's going to be on the TV, it's going to be broadcast to a lot of people. But the fact that it's being shared with a message behind it, it's going to be taken a lot more notice of than if it was just another ad that you saw on television and you just disregarded because you're just waiting for your TV program to come back on. Now, I think this is actually a fantastic idea. Obviously, I'm not happy that the bloody thing isn't on television, because it's spreading a very important message. I'm very pro looking after the planet, trying to keep the world safe, trying to, not destroy the place, because not only do we have to live here, our future generations have to do the same, and I think certainly with certain species like the orangutan, losing loads and loads of animals now means that not only can our children not see them in the future, but you're killing diversity, you're killing everything this world had to offer eventually. Eventually there is going to be nothing left, and it's pretty bleak. Again, slightly more on the depressing side, but you've got to look at the positives. Of course, the actual campaigns now are having a massive impact, and henceforth, hopefully, other companies will start doing the same, because if they can start doing the same, you'll have a bit of a snowball effect going, and with a snowball effect, obviously, it'll keep building and building and building, and more people will rebel against I don't want to call it malpractice necessarily because what they're doing isn't strictly illegal, but the atrocities that these companies are committing just for the sake of making a quick buck. And as much as I'm not necessarily pro-communism, communism never works. The capitalism, at least the very aggressive capitalism currently, that runs certainly the Western world, is slowly but surely eating through the planet. It's burning it up like it were coal until there's nothing left. And I think we just need to slow down, really. I think it's a slow process. It's not going to work overnight. I don't think everyone's going to be completely aware of quite how mullered this planet has become, and I think that's kind of sad because a lot of people are still ignorant to it. But I think eventually people will start to realise that we are extremely detrimental to this planet. Certainly, the more things are progressing, the more resources we're taking up. The more resources we're taking up, the more damage we're causing. And damage is fine so long as it's repairable, so long as you can, I don't know, cause a wound, say, take down 150 trees and then have them grow back. The problem is what we're doing is, yeah, right, sure, we're regrowing, say, 10, 15 trees, but then we're taking down thousands. And that is on a much smaller scale. I'm using it as a macrocosm here. It's a macrocosm. The world is the macrocosm. This is a microcosm, excuse me. It's a microcosm for what's actually happening. The scale is tremendous. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of trees every day, and there are companies that are focusing on growing them back, but it's just not happening fast enough. And eventually, if anyone's seen Mad Max, you'll probably understand. That is the sort of reality that has been proposed as something that could happen unless we find an alternate fuel source or alternate forms of resources. Obviously, hydrogen power is becoming very big. You've got electric cars and things. The only issue with electric cars is where'd you get the electricity from in the first place? And yeah, we're still burning hydrocarbons to generate electricity. Either that or using nuclear power, and the problem with current nuclear fission, which is what we use in our nuclear reactors, is that it's dirty, it's not clean, it produces an enormous amount of waste, and we may as well just be, again, polluting the atmosphere by just shoving fuel into our cars and doing it that way. Electric cars are fantastic in theory. In practice, they're almost causing just as much pollution, purely because the electricity needed to charge them is still generated by burning an enormous amount of oil that realistically the world cannot keep up with. Now, there's been a lot of investment and work into hydrogen-powered fuel cells and things. Now, I think personally it's the way forward, but it requires an enormous amount more investment, and currently perhaps technology that we don't really possess. My knowledge on physics isn't perhaps as good as it should be really to comment on this topic, but I feel like the progression to electric cars is a start. Obviously, yes, it still burns fuel, but it's not quite as severe as, I don't know, getting out your Mustang, sticking in a tank of gas, and then burning through it in about 5 to 10 minutes. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not good enough. It's not going to slow it down enough, because eventually when everybody has electric cars, the demand for electricity is going to be so high that we may as well have not made the switch in the first place. Obviously, there's a lot of rumours of the government, certainly here in the UK, thinking about switching to completely electric vehicles. No hybrids, no petrol or diesel powered vehicles, 100% electric vehicles by a certain period of time. Now, some people say 5 years, some people say 10 years. I don't even know whether that's a realistic number, to be honest with you. However, it's a step in the right direction. I just think we need to perhaps take more time and more money and put it into perhaps even more efficient systems like hydrogen fuel cells. Now, they're currently extremely volatile, extremely expensive to make, and actually obtaining the hydrogen itself is quite an expensive process, as I understand, which isn't easy. But the only byproduct from these things is water, and once we have finally found a way of perfecting the technology, really narrowing it down, and started putting it into cars, I think that actually combating climate change is going to be considerably easier. Of course, the other option is to finally crack the age-old conundrum of fusion. How can you sustain nuclear fusion? Because if we can crack that, and we can build, say, a fusion reactor, yes, again, that'll be equally as volatile, and you do run the risk of wiping out a hell of a lot more than you would if you, say, blew up, I don't know, something on the scale of Chernobyl. If you can crack that, and you can compress that down to the size of, say, a small car engine, you could conceivably run an enormous amount of power for an enormously long time, very, very cheaply, and with byproducts that are nowhere near as severe as we're currently putting out. It's just another possible way around all of the issues we're facing at the moment. The problem is, both industries at the moment, no matter how many billionaires are around, still lack investment because of how expensive the development process has become. You put enough money into these things, if all of the countries in the world got together, this is inconceivable, but it's worth a shot. All the countries got together, the richest men in the world, piled their money into it, found the best scientists in the world, got together, almost a super team. Yeah, it sounds like something out of a movie, but it could just work. Just to work on developing the cleanest, simplest, or most efficient form of energy production possible or conceivable. And maybe, just maybe, we might actually stand a chance of sorting this out, because it's not just deforestation, it's not just the orangutans. You look in other parts of the world, and even here now, bumblebees are close to being considered endangered. Bees, simple bees, the things that pollinate fruit. Without bees, we don't have honey. Yeah, honey is fairly simple, but bearing in mind, without bees, we also don't have fruit. We don't have pollination. Without pollination, growing fruit is very, very difficult, because you then have to do it using machines, and of course, then it's not clean. It just requires more energy, which in turn burns more fossil fuel. It's a downward spiral. You let the bees die, we slowly die. Not just pollinators, there's other insects or other small animals. We have wiped out more than 40% of the world's wildlife in the last 30 or 40 years. Before I was even born, we didn't stand a chance of keeping those. And I think that's somewhat worrying. It does kind of make you lose faith in the human race sometimes. However, there are programs to bring some of these species back. There are certainly a lot of protection programs in place. Obviously things like the white rhino, oof. Anti-poaching needs to be ramped up a hell of a lot more, because you have all these scummy people that just go to make a living out of slaughtering helpless endangered animals just to make a quick buck, and that to me is disgusting. But I think if the world really does get together, stops worrying about silly little issues, and focuses on the big picture, on saving the planet, on keeping everything pristine, so that our next few generations, at the very least, can have a good quality of life without relying on technology, or without relying on what we've had to use to counteract the fact that the world is slowly but surely being taken from us, then perhaps we might actually stand a chance of making a better planet for everyone, I think. Whether it be politically, or socially, or visually, or just in terms of like going out and enjoying yourself. I genuinely believe that it's not necessarily about just making, oh yeah, cleaner air, or, oh yeah, so, I don't know, Sonny can go to the zoo and see his favourite gorilla. It's much more than that. It's about actually conserving the thing that brought basically humanity into existence. We are effectively destroying our creator, whether you believe in God or not, or whether you believe in another entity, whatever. We are destroying that which hosts us and brings us into existence. And I think it's really time that we put our foot down and we stop it from happening, because it's getting worryingly bad. It really is. And that's, again, a little depressive segment over, but I think no one puts it better than David Attenborough, who is infamous and one of my idols, I must say. The man is simply incredible. He's certainly no spring chicken anymore, and he says he's planning to make documentaries into being over 100 Now, how anyone can have the energy to do that when I used to have to rely on 4Coffee's day to get me going is completely beyond me, but, I mean, he really is incredible. Now, speaking of David Attenborough, the last little thing that I'm going to talk about today, I think, is he has had a new series come out on the BBC. It's called Dynasties, and it's a little bit more of an in-depth look at various social species, which you didn't really get from, say, Planet Earth or a few of his other documentaries, where they would dedicate one episode to several different individuals or several different creatures and how they got on. This one is a lot more in depth, it's a lot more widespread. Now, I haven't actually seen both episodes yet, I only sat and watched the episodes regarding the chimps beforehand. I know there's an episode about penguins. I need to sit and watch that, but I've just been so damn busy that I haven't been able to get around to it yet. But I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone. It does show how brutal nature can be, in a little bit of a contradiction to what I was just talking about. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't preserve it, because nature is more brutal than we are, and obviously we get our things from nature, our mannerisms, whatever you want to call it. But it really is a fantastic eye-opening experience. It does provide more reason for why animals should be preserved. And David Attenborough himself has spoken about climate change, about destroying the environment numerous times. Some of what he said has actually been quite controversial. But, you know what? I actually don't blame him. I think a lot of what he has to say about regulating everything, it makes an enormous amount of sense. I think protecting the world is a very high priority. We need to start dedicating more time to protecting our wildlife, protecting our planet, and helping those in need. Again, this isn't just about protecting the planet for the sake of protecting the animals. It's protecting the planet for the sake of ourselves. It's helping us as a human race. Back to a point that I again have brought up before, there are kids out in other countries that are less economically developed, some parts of Africa where the governments are tremendously corrupt and the actual general population have next to nothing. We need to start doing something or finding a way to prevent these atrocities from happening. But yes, his documentaries are excellent. If you haven't actually checked out the new one yet, I would very much go and watch it, give it a watch. It's great, not just to pass time or procrastinate, but if you're genuinely interested in that sort of thing, it is really brilliant. I have also been watching an enormous amount of television recently, and probably shouldn't be. So I've been watching that, obviously. Sherlock I've been rewatching for the umptillionth time. Still my favourite TV show of all time. I think it has very many flaws. It's by all means not perfect, and it's been criticised several times for various different things, but I think Benedict Cumberbatch is brilliant in it. I just wish they would do more, but I can understand why not, because obviously he's in Doctor Strange. But yes, Sherlock I've been watching. I finished Peep Show the other day. Quite funny if you just want to chuckle, but other than that, what else have I been watching? I do want to go through and watch Doctor Strange again. Went to go and see Fantastic Beasts, the new one, with Eddie Redmayne at the weekend. Now, I was slightly intoxicated at the time, so my judgment isn't perfect. However, the one thing I will say is it was a good film. I would say it was solid. Perhaps less action in it than the first one, but I feel like this was a lot more of, not so much a filler episode in a TV show akin to that, but I would say it more built upon the world than was actually about excessive developments. Now, there is a huge twist at the end. I won't spoil it for anyone that actually wants to go and see the film, but I certainly didn't see it coming, and I'm normally pretty good at predicting these things. So another one I would put on the list to go and watch if anybody is particularly bored or has nothing to do. But that was something I went to go and see for my friend's birthday. Again, hence why I've been so incredibly busy. And regarding TV shows, yes, no, that's pretty much how I would sum that up. Go and watch Dynasties. Watch Sherlock if you haven't. It's genius. It really is brilliant. And as much as the actual character of Sherlock in the BBC's version is a bit of an arse, I think if there were actually more people like that around, it would certainly make society quite interesting. I'll say that much. But back to my point, David Attenborough will continue to make these shows, and that also highlights why it's so important to focus on protecting what we have. So go and watch Dynasties, go and check out Sherlock if you can, or if you've got time, only after you've done any work that you have, because chances are anyone listening to this is either A, sticking it on the background to do work, or B, procrastinating. And frankly, I don't know whether procrastinating is exactly what you should be doing, because chances are you've got work to do. Anyway, very much recommend checking any of those things that I've mentioned out. But as I'm rambling on just a little bit, I think I should probably wrap it up for today. Once again, just a quick little apology for not uploading last week. Again, I was incredibly busy, and I can come up with as many excuses I like, but it just didn't happen, and that makes me a very uncommitted person. Well, I mean, you say that. I do have commitments, it's just that they were slightly bigger than actually staying committed to constantly recording this. So I will try and remain as consistent in my uploads as I can, but I can't make promises because as a student I've got a lot going on right now, and I think I would much rather focus on getting the important things done and then coming to this as my hobby, when and if I can. Now, just to wrap it off, I think my song of the week, as I've been in quite a good mood and have had a fantastic, albeit stressful few weeks, will be Dean Martin, Ain't That a Kick in the Head. Nice little one for anyone who is a fan of a little bit older music, nothing too modern. And that's everything for today, so thank you all for listening, and I will speak to you, or at least see you, or even neither of those, next week.